Hi, I'm Michelle Veray.
And I'm Kimberly Trong, and we are the host of Crush Fictionally, a podcast all about your favorite fictional characters from movies, TV shows, and more.
Each episode, we pick a theme, curate a list of characters that we love, why we love them, and some fun facts about the people who created them.
So if you've ever felt a true connection with a fictional character,
tune in to Crush Fictionally on Campfire Media.
Or wherever you find your podcast.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Spinning Platters Presents How Did I Get Here? Today we've got Julie Schuchard of Tricycle Records, and she also spent some time working at Mezzanine and The Battery and everywhere, I think. If you've gone to a show in the Bay Area at any point in the last decade, I would say, Julie had something to do with it. Either sign the band you're going to go see, or design the flyer, or did something. She's an awesome person. She told me some good stories. I think you will really enjoy this episode. So crack open a mango white claw and enjoy the show. So all of these start with the same question. And
Okay.
since you haven't listened to any of these, you don't know what that question is.
I know.
So, do you recall what the musical moment was that made you think, this is what I'm doing with the rest of my life?
Wow. I think, let's see, I was 17 years old and I saw Guns N' Roses. It was my first show that I had seen. And I have never experienced that feeling at a concert since. Like it was like the first time, you know? But I just remember being completely taken by that feeling and constantly seeking out that feeling and realizing that I could actually have a career where I would help create environments that would bring out that feeling. So yeah, I guess my answer is Guns N' Roses.
That's beautiful. So, everyone that's on the podcast accidentally gives their age out at this point, anyways. So I hope
Yeah.
that's okay. But what year is this? Because I'm trying to figure out what tour that would have been.
Let's see, it was 1989. So it was, I guess, between Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion, I think.
Oh yeah, 89 would have been Lies, I think.
Or Lies, yeah. So he, at the show, Axl Rose came out and played on a grand piano, and he did that amazing classical intro and debuted November Rain.
That's pretty intense.
And I remember thinking, I mean, the thing about that show, other than the fact it was like really when Guns N' Roses were in their prime and their stage show was so tight and just amazing, the production of the show was done really well. And they started off the show just playing because they had like a couch and some big chairs on the stage, and they just came out and played acoustic. And like they were sitting around, they wanted to recreate this moment where they were sitting around their living room writing these songs. And then, you know, they moved the rest of the set out and did the full-on live rock show, which was intense and amazing. And this is Reno, Nevada, so, you know, it's crazy. There were like topless cocktail waitresses running on and off the stage, taking beer to the crowd. Like, it was pretty wild. But then for the second half of the show, they kind of had the spotlight on the side of the stage and this beautiful grand piano. And Axl Rose came out and played classical piano for like 10 minutes. And it was absolutely amazing. Like, it was that moment of like, wow, like they just rocked my face off. And now he's playing classical. And it was like everything. It was just such an emotional show. Like seeing this whole spectrum of music being played on this stage. And I can just remember that feeling of like wanting more of this. So yeah, that was one of my first concerts. My actual first concert though was in 1974. I was one at the Grateful Dead with my parents, who were Grateful Dead heads. So I kind of grew up at Grateful Dead shows. So that's like really was my intro to music as a child, like, a little hippie kid. And I'm actually pretty sure, I don't know if this is true. This is a story that my mom always told me, but at one point, the Dead were on the stage and they were getting ready to play. And someone had to on the stage with a lost child, which was me. I was lost and they were trying to find my parents. So they were like, does this kid belong to anyone? I'm standing there probably naked with like a moon and stars painted on my face. Because that's kind of what people did at Grateful Dead shows. They just let their kids run around wild. So, I mean, if it's true and not just a rumor, I was technically on stage with the Grateful Dead in 75, 76. So
Wow, and
that's my claim to fame.
And you got returned to the right parents, I'm presuming.
I did, yeah. Yeah. I did get returned to the correct parents.
Oh, good, because that would have been a really strange way to go about the rest of your life.
It would, yeah. That would make a great film, though. Could you imagine? Lost her kid at a Grateful Dead show, and then she reemerges like 20 years later.
Yeah, or like there was just a switch.
There's like a switch. They go home with the wrong kid. They're so high on acid they don't even notice for like, years. Anyways, the 70s were fun. People were having a great time.
That's what I've heard. I only experienced them for about 2 months, so and I have no memory of those 2 months at all.
Wow. So you were born in 1979?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I guess age just comes out on this show, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well,
to the surface.
Yeah. Well, it came out for me when Tanya Donnelly was on because my first show was Belly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that definitely does date you.
Yeah, and I was 12 and my first show was Belly with Radiohead opening up.
Oh my God! Your first show was Radiohead. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, where did you go from there? Your
know.
First show was Radiohead.
So you saw November Rain at your get debuted basically. If I'm not mistaken, My Iron Lung was played for the first time that night.
Wow.
Yeah, which not as ubiquitous a track as November Rain, but still like it was
that moment. You were there for a moment.
Yeah. Because they said this is a new one and they opened with a song, and I thought this is good, and I found it later the show and rewatched and was like, oh yeah, that was My Iron Lung. Oh
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I saw Radiohead on the Pablo Honey tour, which very few people I think can say that.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know anyone who can say that. So
yeah, actually worked with somebody that opened for Radiohead on the Pablo Honey tour in like a dive bar in the East Coast, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so Guns N' Roses like brought you into this world. I've sneaked on your LinkedIn because that's the only way for me to research this thing. Yeah. And I noticed that like your career on LinkedIn starts with Tricycle Records. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of curious what got you to founding a record label, because you don't just wake up and have a label.
So prior to, I guess my LinkedIn doesn't go back as far as Tricycle Records. I was actually a music photographer for years. Do you remember Catherine Hoffer with Performer Magazine?
I remember Performer Magazine.
So I used to shoot for Performer Magazine. I actually started off as a noise pop photographer when I was in grad school in 2006. I started shooting with Peter Ellenby, was my mentor. He was running the photographers for noise pop. Noise pop was still pretty small We weren't doing any like major venues. So I was a noise pop photographer and shooting for Performer Magazine. And then Performer Magazine went under, and Catherine started working with Venus Magazine in Chicago. So she brought me in as her photographer, and we covered all the festivals on the West Coast, or the Northwest Coast. So I was kind of doing, shooting a lot of festivals, shooting a lot of local bands. My best friend at the time was Elise Nordling, who had a show, Indie Pop Rocks, on Soma FM. We had met at South by Southwest, which is another thing that really solidified that I wanted to be in the music industry. I started going to South by Southwest kind of by accident. One of my best friends lived there, and she worked for the Austin Chronicle and was really busy because it was South by Southwest. And she's like, listen, I can't hang out with you during the days. So, and here's a pass. And she just threw me a pass to this music festival. And this was like, wow, I think 1997, 1998, very early on. So yeah, I mean, the big headliner was Modest Mouse. That was like the big band. Again, this is very early festival. So it was before there were even day parties. There was one day party. So I started going to South by Southwest to do photography and just to see music. And I met Elise on a plane there. And we both realized that we were kind of at the same stage in our careers where we both just wanted to go to as many shows as possible. So we kind of made this pact that we would be each other's plus one. And I would go anytime she was on the list for her radio station. I would go with her, and anytime I was on the list to photograph shows, she would come with me. We both worked for Noise Pop. So I was pretty immersed in the music scene as a photographer. And also doing like lots of publications, you know, like I shot Bird Monster when they first came out. I had my first publication in Spin Magazine of Bird Monster. I had a bunch of stuff in SF Weekly and the Chronicle, and, you know, like I was working my way up as a music photographer. But through this, I was working with lots of bands. And I just remember thinking, wow, like these bands are all so great. Why is no one working with them? And I remember I had a good friend that lived in Montreal, and he sent me, I had been telling him that I wanted to start a record label. And he sent me this little demo of this band called Wolf Parade. And it was a 5-song demo, a little like literally made on a computer. And the like packaging was like photocopied on paper and just folded over, and like, you know, total handmade EP. And he's like, this band's so great, you should sign them for your label, like your first little signing. And I was like, oh, I wish I could. They were in Canada, and, you know, it was really complicated. Kicking myself for not following up with that, obviously, because the next year they got invited to tour with Arcade Fire and completely blew up. And I was like, God, I should have signed that band. So that was kind of like this moment of like, oh, I do have an ear. I should have trusted myself. So I was photographing a lot of bands, and this band, the Union Trade, hired me to photograph their show. And I was backstage talking to the guitarist, Don Jocelyn. And I asked him what he was going to do with this music. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I'm a web designer. I'm just going to make up a fictitious label and we'll put it out on that. And I was like, well, and by now we're drinking whiskey, you know, which is really when the best conversations happen, right? When you're just drinking whiskey and you're like, okay, let's really go there. So yeah. I somehow convinced him that why start a fictitious label? If you're going to do all the work, why not just start a regular, legit label? So I tell him my whole idea. And my concept was that I wanted to be kind of training wheels for the music industry. I wanted to have a label that was kind of like the first label that a band had to help them kind of get off the ground, you know, like professionalize them. I'm a designer, so I had already been doing a lot of press kits for bands and a lot of band photos and that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know, what if we just offered this to bands as, you know, to help them? And so I convinced him to think about starting a label with me. And the next day he called me and said, okay, let's do this. And we did it. We literally just did it. And I remember, and it's funny because you had mentioned that you interviewed Chris Applegren last week. I was on a noise pop panel for something. Oh wait, no, I wasn't. That came later. Backing up, I remember sitting at the bar at Cafe du Nord after Noise Pop show, and I was having a drink with Chris, and I said, "Hey, Chris, I have this idea. I'm thinking about starting a record label." And I remember him telling me, "Don't fucking do it, Julie." Don't fucking do it. I remember him shaking his finger at me. Don't do it.
But that actually was the moral lesson of his episode.
Yep. Yeah. So several years later, I sat on a panel with Chris, and that's when for Noise Pop, and I was the only female record label owner on this panel. And it was a bit tough because I was very silenced. Like, I wasn't really given the space to talk as much as the other panelists, but I did get some words in, and I did get to joke with Chris about how I wouldn't be sitting there if I listened to Chris Applegren, who shaked his finger at me. But now, 16 years later, I'm definitely looking back and I understand where he was coming from, because it's hard. It's really hard. And once you start committing to working with bands, you're in it. Like, you have a distribution. We had a 5-year distribution deal with all of our bands. So I was locked in for 5 years, you know? So it's like every time I signed a band, I was like committing to someone for 5 years, which is a big commitment, you know? So backing up, Don and I launched the label with his band, Big Union Trade, which is a post-rock band. And the release did really well. It was their first release, so it was kind of like us kind of figuring out what we wanted to do with this label. And then he wanted to make the label a post-rock label. And I protested because I didn't, you know, I just didn't want it to be a genre-specific label. I didn't want to corner myself that way. So at the time, I was looking at a couple different bands, and he wasn't into it, and we kind of fought about it a little. And he's like, "Fine, you just sign your bands, I'll sign my bands." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So I signed a couple bands. I signed this band called The Frail, which was this kid that found me on MySpace. This is how we did music when we started the label in 2006. Everyone was on MySpace. That was like our platform. That's how you met bands. It's how you played music. It was like, we all had to figure out HTML to figure out how to post on it. You know, like, these kids these days have no idea what we went through.
Yeah, TikTok is a lot easier than MySpace. That's true, but
so much easier. So I started working with The Frail. I signed this band, The Blacks, which later evolved into Rich Girls. And the bands did really well. And I was booking shows for them. And then we got really lucky. And I had a friend at Iota Distribution. And you know, I knew Kevin through Noise Pop. I knew a lot of the people that worked there through Noise Pop. And normally to get, and this is a time where you had to go through a digital distributor as a label. You couldn't just like go to iTunes and be like, "Hi, I want to release some music." Like, you kind of had to go through someone. So somehow we got on Iota, and I'm still friends with my reps that I worked with, even though Iota is long gone. So we just kind of plugged along. Meanwhile, Don kind of realized that I was really best to do A&R, and he is more the business guy. So he kind of handed A&R over to me. And then I got approached by this really cute band called Geographer. And they had this little 7-inch, and they actually reached out to me, and I was like, well, you know, I wasn't really looking at bands to release just a single because it's the same amount of work. And I was like, well, you know, I want to release something that's a full length or even an EP, but you know, one song is really hard for us. But they wouldn't let up. And I remember they invited me to come see them play at Rock Make. And I went backstage and I met Brian and Nate and Mike. And I just asked them, I was like, why do you want me, why me? Why do you want me to release this? And they're like, I don't know. We've just been kind of watching you and your label, and we just think you're the right person to put this record out. And so I made them a deal, and I was like, okay, I'll put this record out for you. It was just a 7-inch EP, or 7-inch Kites, the original Kites, and a cover of Age of Consent on the B-side. And I made a deal with them that I would get a follow-up EP. And so we released that record, then we released a follow-up EP, and then they just blew up. And it was amazing because they were the exact model of what I wanted my label to be. I wanted to use it as a launch pad for a band, but help them get whatever they needed to get to the next level. So we brought in a manager for them. I don't know if you know Robbie Purcell, but Robbie came in. He's like a brother to me, but he came in to manage them. We brought in a sound engineer. We took him to South by Southwest. Tom Windish came to see them, and we got a call from Tom Windish. Hey, we want to have him on Windish. So it just kind of all happened. And they later went on to other labels, but everyone came back to us for that first release. Animal Shapes, which is still one of my favorite of all of their records. And, that was like the model of the label, like actually worked. It was like, okay, we, set the foundation for this band and we helped them in their success. And then we saw this return when people came back to buy their music from us. So it was great. And, I thought that I could implement that model with other bands, and I was really energized and excited. But not every band's the same. All bands are different. And, it's like any other relationship. You sign up for a relationship, you don't know what baggage is coming with it. You don't know if that band's going to break up. You don't know. I mean, I've been through all these situations, and I'm not going to name the band, but this is like, I started working with these artists, and I was like, they were brothers. They were ready to tour. They had all this great music. I was like, oh, this is a sure thing. And then one of them found out he had a kid he didn't know about.
Wow.
He's like, oh, we can't tour now, and we're not making music. And it was like the whole thing changed. And I was like, I just released a record with them, and I was like, didn't see that coming. So yeah, I mean, there's just no way to tell, like, the success of a label and a release and an artist. There's so many factors, and it's like that main factor is, are they going to be able to tour? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that even though I've started off very energetic with this label, it's been a labor of love for sure. And I've had to change with the music industry. It's not this moment of like, okay, this is what we do, and this is what we're going to continue to do. Like enter Bandcamp and CD Baby, and suddenly bands have a way to release their own music and they don't need labels. So then we had to switch gears and decided to do vinyl pressing, which was really great. And I love doing vinyl pressing. That's like my passion. But again, really expensive. And also you're relying on bands to go tour. So it's an investment. I have a basement filled with records of bands that are no longer together. Like,
oh dear.
That can't tour. So I cry on them sometimes. I mean, it's just such an unstable industry, and I think that it's just so funny, this like full circle with Chris Appleton, because I always go back to that moment where he shook his finger at me and he's like, don't do it. And I'm like, why didn't I listen to Chris? But it is, you can't tell me not to do something. If you tell me not to do something, then I'm probably going to do it just to spite you. So
yeah, I mean, the drive to prove somebody wrong is sometimes better than the drive to prove somebody right.
Yes, it really is. I don't have regrets though. I mean, I kind of decided to start doing this local bands compilation, which we offer as a free download on our website. And we just released our 10th one this year. And that has been a really great project because it's kind of my way to reconnect with the local music community. um, we kind of decided that we would be a Bay Area only label, and there were several reasons for that. I mean, I wanted to work with bands that I could meet face to face and be part of that their everyday, and you just can't do that when you're in other places. And also, all my connections were here. At that point, I started booking Milk Bar, and I was started working at music venues. So I was using a lot of those connections to get my band's shows, and I was getting to know a lot of agents in the industry, and I wouldn't have that in other markets. So we kind of just became this Bay Area label. So it was this focus on just Bay Area artists, and the compilation kind of reflected that. It was like my chance every year to get to know what was going on locally, and we put out a call for submissions, and all these bands would send us their music, and it was just really great because it was always bands that I never knew existed. So I don't have regrets about that part. It's been really great being part of this music scene. But there's a little part of it that steals your soul. There's some bitterness there. Underlying bitterness.
Yeah, I mean, find me a line of work that doesn't steal your soul a little bit.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. Man, there's so many interesting things you said, and I'm trying to like remember what to pull the questions out of. But you made a few interesting points about how artists don't really necessarily need a record label to distribute their works right now. But then you also like kind of sold your label accidentally, talking about how you have you kind of have the weight to get people shows.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels like you're doing the Live Nation 360 deals.
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's so great that you just said that. I can't tell you why. I'm gonna have to tell you offline why that's so great. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I was at Mezzanine for a long time. I was at Public Works. I was at Mezzanine, and then I just did like a 360, and I went in a different direction with my career and started doing design work, and really. And some of that is in the music industry. I work at the Battery, and so there's a lot of crossover with events. And I've definitely had my bands play at the Battery and gotten them some opportunities. But I think when I shifted my career towards doing design work, I kind of lost that entryway into the music industry. I feel like all of these great organizations that I had connections with, like IOTA, who was our digital distributor, Ticketfly back in the day. I knew everyone there. I thought I worked there because I was there all the time, reading your cereal. I just had connections, and I feel like I don't have the same connections anymore. So it's a bit harder for me to offer that to my artists. And that's really what this industry is. I mean, it's come down to bands don't need help with anything, but they need introductions, and and in a way, that's the growth side of the industry that I'm really not into. With this, like, who can you get me in front of? Who do you know? Who are you going to share my music with? What can you do for me? And I think the last few artists that I worked with had that attitude, and it really kind of broke my heart in a way. Because it's like, I don't know what I can do for you. I'll give you all my passion. I'll give you like everything I can. But there's just different expectations that artists have now when they expect, I don't know what they expect. I mean, they expect the label to be like their like solution for everything. And I don't think they understand. It doesn't really work like that. It doesn't. Like, if anything, a booking agent is a way better deal for you than finding a record label. Like, they're the ones that are really going to catapult your career. So yeah, it's a crazy industry. And then you add the pandemic on top of that. And I don't even know where we're at right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you talk about connections, I think the pandemic kind of scrambled everyone's connections and everyone's relationships, like, because so many people lost their jobs immediately, like high level people that have been around a really long time. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like there's some places where, like you mentioned Noise Pop a few times. I think right now I don't know anybody at Noise Pop, which
Oh, wow.
feels weird to me because like I've kind of had a pretty good relationship with them, like spinning pliers and Noise Pop for a long time.
I know.
Um, but yeah, like the pandemic reset, kind of a lot of people left, and a lot of people that stayed, I think, are just a lot younger.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same way. And I used to work at Blowfish, so I was on the other side of their office, and that was when Chris and Stacy and Julie were there. Which in my opinion was like the Noise Pop dream team. Those three together were just amazing. And Dan Kaysen was booking the festival, and yeah, I mean those were like the glory years for Noise Pop. It was so great. But yeah, same thing. I don't recognize any of the writers for publications. Um, yeah, it's a different industry, and I mean, I just feel old. I feel like I'm too old for this industry. I'm too old for this hustle. I'm so tired of writing and emailing people and explaining who I am. I'm just done. I'm just done with it. Sorry, I'm supposed to be uplifting and happy about the
Oh,
music industry, right?
no, again, speaking your truth is really the important thing, anyways. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a weird time, but it's gonna keep being weird for another. I think everybody's still like is just starting to like find their bearings again.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think we're gonna really feel comfortable and know how things are like. I don't think we're going to be back in a groove until sometime next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. When all the festivals start happening and
Yeah, although, geez, so like everybody's trying to push everything into fall this year, and it's kind of burning me out. There are there are at least three Bay Area music festivals the weekend of October 15th.
which ones?
Wichita, 20th Street Block Party,
Oh,
and Halloween Meltdown, which is
oh,
from the people at the production team that put on Burger
Catch
Boogaloo.
Productions, yeah.
Yeah, the Total
I'm really
Trash
glad to
team.
see that one coming back. Is Bikini Kill still playing?
So Bikini Killer playing Mosswood Meltdown in July.
Oh, okay.
Halloween Meltdown is something different. I have no idea who's playing. I know John Waters is hosting.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, so we've got three music festivals that weekend. Something in
Wow.
Sonoma, something in San Francisco, something in Oakland.
Wow.
So it's good. Like that alone is just yeah. I'm kind of excited about people just getting all this out of their system and seeing how crazy they can go with booking
Yeah.
for things to get
Yeah,
normal
the
again.
booking is crazy. I'm seeing some of these lineups. I'm like, what is happening here?
Mhm.
They're all pretty crazy. But
Yeah, yeah, but yeah. So back to Tricycle a little bit. So you're still running the label, and you had to run the label during the pandemic when people were taken off the road. What did you do to try to sell records while you couldn't get bands in people's faces?
um, that was really tough. It was tough because there was so much need for other things in the world that I didn't consciously feel okay trying to sell anything. We did some giveaways. We did, for like anniversaries of records. I always post and like, hey, shoot me a message and I'll send you this record for free, or and we had been working with Andrew St. James. We don't work with him anymore, but he was doing these live pop-ups all around the city, and so he was actually selling some records through the website through that. But yeah, I mean, we just kind of went into hiatus, and I really put my energy into our compilation because I knew that artists were going into the studio and writing and making art with kind of all of these feelings of isolation and feelings of stress and anxiety, and channeling it kind of into their music. So we did put out a compilation in November, which was really meaningful to have, you know, artists and music, and that was really great to be involved with. So, but yeah, I mean, we've kind of just been on hiatus. Another major thing in play right now, and I told you earlier that we primarily do vinyl pressing. The entire vinyl pressing industry has crashed, and there's only a certain number of vinyl presses in the world, and because all of these delayed schedules because of the pandemic, everything is running a year out. So, oh, remember I told you I have a loud cat? Here she comes. It's virtually impossible to release music anytime in this year, unless you did like a digital release with a pre-sale of records but I have two design clients where I'm designing records for them, and we're basically looking at the release for next year. So it's like next June, they're going to have their records. So that's another just hurdle in music right now. You know, like if you're a label that makes your money off pressing vinyl, and this is an industry problem. This isn't just small indies. Major labels are having the same problem. Every time I go into Amoeba, I'm like kind of bracing myself to start seeing the shelves kind of empty out, because we're really going to see the effects of that in the next year. There are less records being made. So yeah, I mean, this pandemic has really affected a lot of things, and it's definitely made me rethink what this label is. And the thing that I love about it is being part of the music community and being asked to be, you know, like I consult with Creative Sonoma and do consulting sessions with musicians that are grant recipients through this program. And I work with the Girl Power music conference. So there's a lot of ways that I want to still be part of the community that might not be through the label. But I think the labels kind of helped me establish who I am and allowed me to build these connections with people. So even if I don't have a record label, I'm still going to be part of the music scene in lots of ways. And I'll find some way to be part of the music scene and support Bay Area music for sure.
Yeah, man, this actually feels like
I just broke up with you.
Yes.
It feels like a breakup.
No, but this also so this feels like the natural end to the interview.
Yeah.
And I always end with the same question as well. And again, you haven't heard this, so you don't know what that question is. So
I don't know what it is.
So most people don't like the first and last question. I think my favorite was when I had Russell Gatewood from Onk Marketing, and he said, "Oh, so you start with the hate, then you end with the hate." But yeah, so if you could go back and talk to Julie right after she left the Guns N' Roses show, not the Grateful Dead show, because that you were probably horrified and crying that night. But yeah, what would you say to her about what you've accomplished?
What would I say to her about what I've accomplished, or what would I warn her about?
You know, it could be either of those.
I mean, I would tell her that music is so enjoyable, and it's going to be a huge part of your life. And you can always have music in your world, and you can always be part of music. You don't have to work in the music industry to have that. And as much as I've loved, and you know, I think a lot of people that work in music can relate to this, I loved having access to being backstage at shows and having, you know, being able to meet and talk with artists and be on that level where I can actually, be in the industry. Um, but I think I would tell her, just be a fan. Just be a fan. And I don't regret my years as a music photographer. It shaped me as a photographer. It taught me so many lessons about waiting for a photo and being patient and waiting for something to happen to capture it. Because your job is to capture something on stage that's happening, not create it with your camera. And so I would tell her, like, pursue a career in music photography and enjoy that, but don't feel like you have to do all these other things, because the music industry is not the friendliest place for women. And, like, it's easy for us to look around and be like, oh, I know so many female booking agents, and I know so many female artists and so many female labels and all of these things. But the reality is that we all struggle with people taking us seriously. And I think you reached out to interview me after I shared a story on my Facebook page about someone I was dating that wasn't even he wrote music. He wasn't by any means a professional musician, but asked me for my help and my feedback. And when I gave it to him, his response was that it was wrong because I couldn't possibly know anything about music. And I laughed at that, obviously, because I have great taste in music. I have 1,000 records in my living room that prove that. Okay, they're not all wonderful, but most of them are. But I kind of laughed at that because I was like, people have said a lot of things about me in the music industry, but no one's really said that I don't have taste. So, but it was this moment of like, and then he broke up with me. He wrote a song for me that was terrible that I shared with you also. It was interesting to me because the song is about how, he couldn't continue seeing me because I couldn't relate to him on his own level of genius in music. And because I couldn't understand that, he couldn't continue forward with me. So the song is really about how I don't understand his music. And it was an interesting way to tell me I don't have taste by writing a really bad song. But I just laughed it off. But it's really indicative of being in the music industry and not having people take you seriously when you give feedback. And I always wonder, I'm like, how would he have responded to the same feedback that came from a man? And the feedback that I gave him was very generic, and it was somewhere in the line of, you have a really good foundation here. I think that you would really benefit with working with a producer, someone that could really help you pull together your songs and build a catalog that is cohesive. So, I didn't really say anything bad about his music, but it was just the reaction, and it just reinforced that I just don't want to do this anymore. I love being a fan of music, and I really want to go back to that. And I love designing records, and that's something I'm definitely going to continue doing. And I also really love when my friends send me really rough demo tracks, and I hope that continues because it fills my heart, and I love music and I love listening to it. But I feel like the music industry kind of stole some of the love that I had for it for a while, and it's taken me some time to get it back. But I'm excited to start going to shows again, and I think that I'm definitely going to go with a new perspective than my pre-pandemic perspective of music.
Thank you, Julie, once again for joining the show. Thank you, all of the parents of the world that have lost their children at Grateful Dead concerts. As you can see, they all grew up to be highly motivated professional people. Yeah, I catch you next time. I know these are coming out super irregularly, and they're going to keep coming out super irregularly. I don't even know if this still counts as season 2. Season 2 is just going to last a long time. Anywho, I love all of you. Don't forget to get vaccinated if you're one of the 20 people that haven't. I'm pretty sure everybody that listens to this thing has. Yeah, see you soon.